This is either going to be the shortest one of these videos I make or the longest one, because there isn't a whole lot to talk about in this movie, but what there is to talk about is worth praising non-stop over, because this is a film that was based on a play. And that's not a negative thing in any way, shape, or form. I just know there are a couple of people out there who are going to feel a little bit weird about it, because you can definitely tell that this was based on something that existed in two sets. There are only two sets in this entire film: the backyard and the living room. And there are a couple of times in which you see them walking up to the house out in the street, or there are a couple of times in which you see Denzel at work, but the vast majority of the time, this entire movie is just them in the backyard, them in the living room. That's it. So if that's something that you're going to find odd, you might not be able to look past it, but I beg of you, be able to look past that, because this film has so much good in it. This film is all about Denzel Washington playing this character, Troy Maxson, and it's basically just non-stop conversations between him and his wife, him and his son, him and his co-worker. That's pretty much the entire film, but it's an examination of a character. This entire film is almost a sympathy for the devil type of film, because Troy Maxson is not a good guy. He is definitely a very messed up human being. In fact, I know many people out there who had kind of messed up relationships with their fathers, and they watched this film and they said, yeah man, this was my dad. And this wasn't no way my dad, but I had friends who was definitely their father. Like, I definitely remember going over to some of my friends' houses when I was a kid, and I was like, your dad's kind of mean. And I was like thinking about that while I was watching this film. I was like, yep, this is definitely like everybody who has a complex relationship with their father, this is the movie for you. Because this is the film that looks at people like that. Looks at guys who basically do nothing but just shit talk all day. Just do nothing but go like, yeah, I'm the best, that guy over there, he doesn't know what he's talking about. People like that, but also people who kind of peaked way too early in life. Those people who constantly like reference back their old high school football days, or, you know, anything like that, in which they're like, I could have gone pro, but then I got screwed up by doing this thing here. Like, anybody like that. It's a film that is just an examination of characters like that. And I have to stop and say, Denzel Washington, he's nominated for Best Actor. If he doesn't win, I'm calling so much bullshit. If he doesn't get the Oscar for Best Actor, I will make Denzel his own Oscar out of melted pop figures and gold paint. He won't want it because he already has other Oscars, but still, I hope that the thought counts. Also, Denzel, where can I mail you my crappy melted down fake Oscar? Because you deserve one for this. Denzel Washington is one of those actors who I like, but he's kind of like Tom Cruise to me. He's one of those guys who is so famous, and I recognize him and all of his little tics so much that no matter what movie he's in, I can't buy him as the character, no matter how great of a performance he's giving, because I keep looking at him and going, yeah, it's Denzel Washington. I know Denzel Washington. I know what he looks like. I know what he acts like. That's Denzel Washington right there. He vanishes into this character. This is one of those times in which I was like, I cannot see him at all in here. Like, the second he starts talking, he is just so into every single word and every bit of dialogue that he is giving in this film that you believe it. This does not feel like a movie. This feels like you are watching real people. In fact, I kept thinking to myself, no way this film even had a script, because he just melts into the dialogue so well. I was like, he has to be improvising. He has to just be saying this off the top of his head, because I cannot imagine that somebody wrote dialogue that sounded this real and someone was able to then deliver it exactly like a real person. Because I love that I just described what acting is, and I said I can't believe that it happened. That's how good this movie is. It made me look at it and go, that cannot be an actor. That has to be a real person. It was like I was discovering movies for the first time. That is the best compliment I can possibly give this film. But yeah, basically this character of Troy Maxson, he was a guy who he had a shitty life himself growing up. As I said, this kind of is a sympathy for the devil type of film. It is a film for anybody out there who has ever gone, man, why is my dad being so mean to me? Why is my dad he's just a monster. But then you hear what made him the person that he is, and you're like, oh, well, he had no other choice in life. That is exactly what he was going to become. And his dad was even worse than that. Like, there was a moment, like I said, this entire film is nothing but just conversations. It's nothing but basically just exchanges between characters, or even just monologues of characters just getting up there and then just saying for a long period of time their entire backstory. And there's a moment in which Troy starts telling his story about when he left home at 14 years old, and then he just hiked 200 miles to the city, because back in 1918 you couldn't hitch a ride with anybody. And I was like, wow. That, when you hear what led him to being the person that he is, it gives such a dimension to this character. This is one of the best characters in any film that I've seen this year. I'm really sorry if I'm just jumping all over the place, but like I said, there isn't a lot really to talk about here in this film. It's not like this is a big story with a lot of twists and turns and they go on some grand epic adventure. It's a dude sitting in his backyard talking to his friend, talking to his wife, talking to his son, talking to his other son, talking to his brother. But all these relationships are so complicated as well. And each of them really shape a different side to this character. Like, for example, when he starts talking to his youngest son wants to play football. But Troy will not let him play football. He wants him to just go and get a job after school every single day. And one of the reasons why he doesn't want him to play football is because when Troy was younger, he played baseball, but he played in the Negro League. And now these days, this is set in like the 1950s. And it's around the time in which black athletes are being allowed to play in the major leagues. And Troy's looking at that, and he's just trash talking. He's looking at that and saying, well, how come I couldn't play? It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if things are getting better now. I couldn't play back when I was able to go head to head with anybody, and I was better than everybody. That is one of the defining things about his character. He is just constantly saying, I was better than everyone out there, but nobody would give me a shot. And in all honesty, the thing is, he's got a point. I mean, he came up during a time in which it didn't matter if he was the greatest athlete in the entire world. Because he was black, they would not let him in the major leagues. And now he's living in a time in which that's starting to change, and he's looking at that and going like, well, how come I didn't get my chance? And you have to understand it. You look at that, it's like, yeah, man, you got dealt a horrible card in life. Like I said, this is one of those films in which it's about a guy who just trash talks nonstop. It's about a guy who just puts other people down nonstop. But you look at why he does it, and you go, I understand you. I get this now. But he doesn't want his son to play football. And then there comes a moment in which his son says, why don't you like me? And you think it's the moment in which like his dad is going to be like, hey, listen, no, come on, let's talk about this. He just goes, who says I have to like you? I provide you with clothes, I provide you with food, I provide you with a roof over your head, I give you all these things, and you come in here and ask why I don't like you. And I was like, oh my God, this is just capturing one of the most complex relationships between a father and a son I've ever seen in a film. And again, it's just doing it through dialogue. That's the amazing thing about all of this. Man, I am really geeking out over this film way more than I expected to, because I like this movie, but it's not until you start talking about these performances that you really get into like, oh man, that really was good. But that's just his son. When it comes to his brother, who, that was just heartbreaking, because his brother, he went off to World War II, and he got shot in the head, and he has a metal plate in his head now, and he doesn't quite, I do not know the correct way to state this, I'm very sorry, but he is mentally handicapped now, and he constantly, like, thinks that he's seen like angels. He thinks he's seen hellhounds, and he's out there in the streets trying to fight them off at all times. And he's talking about how he has to get his trumpet ready at all times because St. Peter is going to open up the gates, and he has to make sure that he blows his horn, otherwise they're not going to let his brother into heaven. Which, the moment he said that, this entire film is setting up that Troy, again, on these shows, we do full spoilers, but this entire film is just setting up Troy is going to die at the end of this film. Like, it starts off with him smack-talking death. Like, the opening of this film is him joking around with his friend from work and with his wife, and he says, I ain't afraid of death. I saw Mr. Death one day. I saw him with that sickle, and I took that sickle and I threw it down the street, and he ran after, and he said, I'll be back. And I was like, yeah, you come on back. And it's like, that's how they open this film. And when you open a film like that, I was like, he's going to die. That's how this movie's going to end. And then you meet his brother, and it's like, yeah, I have to know how to play this trumpet, otherwise they're not going to open the pearly gates for you. And I was like, okay, now I'm 100% convinced this film is going to end with him being dead. So I will say, maybe that's a small complaint, is that it was real obvious he was going to die. The other small complaint that I kind of had with this film is that every single metaphor in this movie is about baseball. Like, no matter what is going on, Troy will then say, this is like baseball, and he'll make like a metaphor to having 2 strikes, to trying to steal a second. And I was like, man, why do you keep bringing everything back to baseball? But again, it's when you start looking back at this film and at his character, you realize it's because that was the one thing he was really good at. That was the high point in his life. And you really realize that's the only way that he can really comprehend everything, and that is how he has to view everything because of the life that he's had. But going back to his brother got shot in the head in World War II, and the government gave him $3,000, and Troy took that money and used it to buy his own house, which is kind of a scumbag move. But then his wife is like, yeah, but you let him live here. You let him live here and you took care of him at all times, and he couldn't take care of himself. That's not wrong, but you can still see that it is weighing on Troy, which again just shows that this is a complex character. It is a character who, no matter what he does, it's not like he is flat. He is a character who everything that happens does indeed weigh on him. But okay, as I said, the vast majority of this film is just a character study of Troy. However, there does come a moment in which there is a twist. There does come a moment that changes everything. So this is your last moment to turn away from any spoilers. Last chance. As I said, the whole Troy dies at the end of the thing. That was kind of obvious. This one legitimately shocked me. There comes a moment in which his friend Bono takes him aside and goes, listen, your wife Rose, she's a good one. He's like, yeah, I know she's a good one. He's like, all right, I just don't want you messing around on her to cause any trouble. And I went, wait, what? Because I hadn't, like, we heard at the beginning of this film that he was buying Lace and drinks, but I was like, yeah, he's just a guy who likes to flirt. He likes to relive his glory days, but he's not going to actually do anything. Then you find out he's actually doing stuff. I was like, oh, God. This is the moment in which he becomes really destructive as a character. This is the moment in which everything starts to fall apart. Because, like I said, it was one of those characters that you could look at him and go, yeah, you know, he's got a lot weighing on him. He's got a lot of problems to him. But he loves his wife. He's not going to do wrong by her. That's the one thing that you can say about this guy. He wouldn't do that. Guess what? He does that. It turns out that he is seeing this other woman, and then he decides he has to tell her, but he decides he has to tell Rose when he really has to tell her. Because he takes her aside and goes, I'm going to be a father. That's how he breaks the news to her. He says, I'm going to be a father. And just, I've been complimenting Denzel this entire time. Viola Davis plays Rose. She doesn't get nearly as many opportunities to really show off her range and show off her amazing acting abilities as much as Denzel does. But when she gets that opportunity, she takes it. Because when she hears this news, she breaks down but tries to hold herself up at the same time. It is incredible how much acting she does without hardly saying any words at all. It is amazing to watch. Seriously, this is an acting actor's movie. That's what this entire film is. But, okay, man, this was really like one of those moments I'm like, I cannot, like, it's weird that I'm getting like giddy over this moment. But it was such a good moment in the movie. It's a destructive, horrible, crushing moment. But I'm just thinking about how well done it was, and I'm getting excited just thinking about it again. But okay, so he's going to be a father, time keeps passing, and like they keep trying to work stuff out. I mean, it's not like they talk about this, but like they keep trying to live with each other. They keep trying to just let the days go on by, because they don't really have a plan. They don't know what they're going to do. They're just trying to deal with what is happening. And then there comes a moment in which Rose goes and sees Troy where he works, and she says, I'm just asking you, tomorrow, Friday, it's your payday, just come straight home. And he won't even do that. Like I said, the moment that it gets revealed that he is cheating on her, he was like, yeah, you're a carrier with problems. He just starts bobsleighing down into being a piece of crap. And he's like, wow, this is the one thing that my wife needs, just to know that I am faithful enough to come home to her right after this. He won't even do it. That's the thing about his character that made me just go, there is no hope for this guy, is that when he is like trying to explain to her why he did this, why he cheated on her, again, he uses a baseball metaphor. And he just goes, yeah, I've been standing on first for 18 years now. I tried to steal second. And she even has to call him out and go, stop making baseball metaphors. But you're like, this is the only thing he understands. He wants those glory days again so bad. He wants to be a star again so bad. And there comes a moment when she asks, are you going to stop seeing her? And he's just like, no, she makes me feel good. And I was like, wow. He can't even comprehend how he has to stop seeing her. And not just stop seeing her, like, and I don't mean like he can't go and see this child he's going to have. I mean like he can't comprehend why he should stop going and sleeping with her. Like even after he admits that to his wife, simply because he is like, I need this. I have been stuck in a rut for 18 years. This is the one thing that gets me through the day. It's like, you're telling your wife this. You are just a monster at this moment. Like, he is more of a monster at this moment than he was in Training Day. That is the shocking thing. But still, this is a film that just tries to show you how he got to this point in his life, how he became this person. And it's all just through dialogue, and I am just still blown away by that. But the child, the woman he's been sleeping with has the child, but she dies during childbirth. So he brings the baby back home. It's this little girl, and he tells Rose, listen, she doesn't have a mother now. And she's like, so? I was like, gotta be on Rose's side here. You were a complete piece of crap about all of this. Why do you expect her to be good about this? But then she eventually turns around, she comes out, she grabs the baby and says, the sins of the father should not be passed down to the child. This child is innocent and she does deserve a mother. However, you are womanless right now. Like, that was one of the best bits of dialogue in this entire film, because you knew it just stabbed him right where he needed it. It hit him exactly where he should have been hit. And you can just see on his face, like, I've now lost everything. And then, yeah, he starts to degrade so much more after that. And there's only a few more moments with him left in the film, but he confronts his son again, and his son is like, I want to go and I want to play sports. I want to enlist in the army. Like, he's trying to defend his right to be who he wants to be. And Denzel just, God, I can't even really describe how it gets to this moment, but it ends with his son grabbing his dad's old baseball bat and is about to hit him with it. But then Troy takes the bat from him, flips him over, and starts choking him with the bat, and you see Troy's face, and it's not like he's overwhelmed with rage. It's not like he's sad. There is no emotions on his face, and you know he's gone. There is nothing left in there. He doesn't kill his son, but I mean, he is choking his son out, and he's just with the motorcycle out there as well. Sorry, we do this on the thinking couch, which is right next to the window that lets all the sounds of Brooklyn in, so I apologize for that. But imagine that moment in the film without the motorcycle sound. That's how powerful it was. So, then after that, you just see him there, winding up to swing again, and then it cuts to about 6-7 years later, and the whole family is coming together again for his funeral. And at the funeral, you see that his son is now in the Marines. The daughter has grown up, apparently with no idea of, like, you know, how she came to be. His original son, who was a jazz musician, now he's in jail. Bono's still doing fine. Bono, his old friend from work, he's still doing absolutely fine. And Bono was one of my favorite characters in this whole film. But one of the reasons he was one of my favorite characters in this whole film is because he started off just being like the Barney rebel. He was the guy just hanging out behind Troy like, yeah, Troy, oh, you the best, Troy. Oh, man, yeah, I'm right there with you, Troy. But after he starts to descend into darkness, after it gets to that point where he is cheating on the wife, you see him at the bar. He's like, Bono, I don't see you anymore, man. It's like, yeah, well, you know, we're on different schedules now. And it's like, yeah, so, you know, you want to come over, want to hang out? I was like, nah, it's good. And, like, you can tell in that moment, he really saw Troy for who he was. And Bono was smart enough to go, I can't be with you on this, man. I have to get out. It was, again, Bono is not even really there to be a character. He's there to add on to Troy's character. But he becomes his own character in that moment when he just decides, I can't keep following you. You've gone too far. And again, at the same time, that adds on to Troy's character because it shows, yeah, he's gone too far. He lost the one friend who stuck by him in everything. By the way, I just got done reviewing Moonlight a moment ago, and I realized as soon as I got done recording that I mispronounced the main character's name throughout that entire review. So I'm really being self-conscious right now. Like, was it Bono or Bono? I think it was Bono. So again, sorry that I cannot remember names. But anyway, so this film ends with them, they're trying to get everybody ready to go out to the funeral, and then his brother comes in, and he goes, all right, I gotta blow the horn so St. Peter will open the door for him, and he starts blowing it, and just wind comes out. And my heart sank, because it was almost like they were saying, he doesn't get to go to heaven. This dude screwed up too much. That was the most suspenseful moment in this entire thing, when his brother just kept trying to blow that trumpet, and not a sound came out. Until finally, at the very end, one little comes out, and then you see sunlight come out from behind a cloud. And that could have been so goofy. That could have been so lame. That could have been just so cartoonish that it's like, hey, he did it. He blew the trumpet, and now sun has come out from behind the clouds. Except you are so there in that moment that you're like, oh, thank God that the sun came out. Oh, you know what? It's okay. And that to me, it's so shocking that, like, this guy became such a piece of crap at the end of this. He became so horrible at the end of this. And yet you were still kind of glad to see that sunlight come out. You were still kind of glad to hear that trumpet, because in your mind it was like, you know what? I have heard this guy's story. I have seen where he's come from. No matter how much of a piece of shit he might have become in his life, I understand him. And he's suffered enough. And that's kind of what the big summation of his character is. He's a guy who suffered, and he's caused suffering to others, but in the end, hey man, he suffered enough. Let him go. So yeah, this is an actor's film. That's what this is. It is not a film in which there are a lot of twists and turns. There is really just the one twist, and it comes way late in this. This is a movie about just studying this one character and the people around him, and it's about seeing amazing actors pull these performances off. This, hands down, has my vote for Best Actor with Denzel Washington. I don't know how many other awards it's going to get tomorrow night, but that is the one that I'm like, if it doesn't win that, I am gonna throw my hat down on the ground and stomp on like an old prospector. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below what you thought about this movie. Also, if you want to see some of the other Oscar movies that I'm going to be talking about all weekend long leading up to the actual Oscars. I talked a lot, I'm getting dry mouth here. But if you want to see some of the other movies that I'm going to be talking about in my lead up to the Oscars, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. And we'll be putting the playlist for all the videos that we have already done at the end of this video. So thanks for tuning in, come back next time. Bye.